I'm Yulia, the voice of the podcast Love to Heal, a journey of self-discovery, healing, and spiritual growth. Hello, and welcome to today's episode of Love to Heal podcast. If you've been enjoying this podcast, please share it with your friends and family. You can follow me on your favorite podcasting app as well as on Instagram. That way you won't miss any of my updates. Today I'm inspired by fall, specifically Halloween, which is, I have to admit, one of my favorite holidays. Right now it's late September, and in my city there appear more and more decorations in anticipation of this holiday. There are skulls and skeletons and witches and pumpkins. Some are scary, some are funny. And in our house, too, my kids love Halloween, of course. They love trick-or-treating and everything that comes along with that. And they already started to decorate as well, to say the least. Our house is full of decorations this year. It seems to me that kids don't really associate skeletons and such with death. They might think they're spooky, but at my kids' age, 4 and 7, I don't think they grasp the idea of death yet. For instance, my daughter, the 4-year-old, she can't even wrap her head around the fact that there was a time when she didn't exist. And she definitely doesn't comprehend the idea of her not existing in the future. To me, perhaps ever since college, skulls have served as a reminder of the brevity of our lives. And I say since college because I remember learning about this in one of my art history classes. I remember inspecting many 17th century pieces of art that were full of symbolism intended to emphasize the transience of life, the futility of earthly pleasures, and the pointless quest for power and glory. In the 17th century, a dark genre of still life painting flourished in Europe, especially in the Netherlands. Artists would often incorporate into these paintings skulls, cut flowers, soap bubbles, snuffed candles, hourglasses, and clocks, which all represent and remind us of the brevity of life, of the notion that humanity is ephemeral and fragile. Certain paintings stressed the humanistic concept that spiritual and intellectual pursuits outlive mortal existence, that the only way to preserve the soul in the afterlife is to lead a virtuous life, and that wealth and vanity may lead to moral and physical decay. Now I understand why the 17th and 18th centuries were given the title Age of Enlightenment. When I contemplate the world we live in, I feel that we're experiencing the opposite of enlightenment sometimes. Of course, there are many people who have awakened or are on their way to spiritual awakening, but it seems to me that the majority, if we look, let's say, at our country as a whole, I see mostly physical and moral decay. I see waste of precious time, no regard for the soul or the afterlife, and I see a lot of worship of the material and earthly pleasures. I know that history repeats itself and goes through cycles, and perhaps we will experience another age of enlightenment before it becomes too late. That is a question, and that is my hope also, that we do experience another age of enlightenment, and perhaps what people have been talking about, referring to as the 5D consciousness, that we're moving to this new level, dimension, whatever you want to call it. Maybe this will be our new age of enlightenment. That is honestly my hope. So for those who don't think about death or are not spiritual or religious, Halloween might serve actually as a great reminder of our impermanence. For those who do follow some kind of faith, it's actually easier to comprehend death, to be at peace with it, and to not squander our precious time here on earth. For example, Buddhism has stressed the importance of death since its inception. This is because awareness of death is what prompted the Buddha to perceive the ultimate futility of worldly concerns and pleasures. Realizing that death is inevitable for a person who is caught up in worldly pleasures and attitudes, he resolved to renounce the world and devote himself to finding a solution to this most basic of existential dilemmas. After years of diligent and difficult practice, Buddha became enlightened, and through this he transcended death. Buddha's life now provides his followers with a model to emulate. Even today, Buddhist teachers strongly advise their students to meditate on death and impermanence, since they are powerful counteragents to short-sighted concern with the present life and one's own transitory happiness. Tibetan Buddhism places a particularly strong emphasis on instructions concerning death, and Tibetan literature is full of admonitions to be aware of the inevitability of death, the preciousness of the opportunities presented by human birth, and the great value of mindfulness of death. A person who correctly grasps the inevitability of death becomes more focused on religious practice. Since he or she realizes that death is inevitable, the time of death is uncertain, and so every moment counts. On a side note, I just remembered something. When I used to pass by houses that were built right next to a cemetery, I'd think that those people must always be sorrowful and perhaps even frightened. But not too long ago, I heard something that changed my attitude towards cemeteries. Many people who reside close to a cemetery have a very constant reminder of the transience of life, and therefore tend to live happier and fuller lives. In Western religions, going back to different types of faiths, there are reminders about the brevity of life too. Those who attend services at a church or synagogue might have heard of Psalm 39:4, Lord, make me to know mine end, and the measure of my days, what it is, that I may know how frail I am. This psalm is considered a meditation on the fragility of man before God, as well as an acknowledgement of God's control over our lifespan. Prayers such as these help us recognize that every moment is a gift to be cherished and used wisely. Furthermore, all these reminders of death help to put our egos in check. You know, the ego that thinks it's in control of everything and makes us feel indestructible. That one. So, if you typically avoid the topic of death, see if you can find a way to make it part of your regular contemplation, meditation, or reflection on life. Whether it be visiting a cemetery, reciting a prayer for the deceased, or finding a symbol that, such as the skull, reminds you of the transience of life. And this way you can approach the topic not with fear, but rather with gratitude for every moment that you get to experience this miracle of life. Thank you for listening to today's episode of Love to Heal. I would like to leave you with an excerpt from a poem titled A Transient Life. This poem was written by Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, who was an Indian religious leader and the founder of the Ahmadiyya movement in Islam. Enjoy, and until next time. Beware, O ye who are so watchful and by nature pure. In your greed for this world, do not ruin your faith. Do not tie your heart to this transitory abode, for underneath its pleasure lie hidden hundreds of woes. If only you had the ears to hear, you would catch the voice from the grave singing, "Oh, my would-be prey, do not agonize over the sordid affairs of this world." Everyone who is enamored of this wretched world is a hostage to misery, trials, and tribulations.